So I'm going to be interviewing my grandfather, Martin Sweet, who is turning 91. Just I'm going to ask him a few questions about his life. We're out here in the Outer Banks of North Carolina. I've written down some brief questions, but hopefully it's more of a flowing conversation. So I'm just going to start. Oh, my fiance Alyssa is doing the recording. So, Papa,
Yes.
what's your first memory?
My first memory is when I was 2 years old. And I remember everybody talking about Lindbergh had flown over the Atlantic all by himself and had landed in Paris. And there was a parade for him, but I didn't go to the parade. But I remember that my father took me to the movies, and on the, they have a newsreel after the movie, and they showed the parade and him going down Broadway. That's my first really bright memory that I can remember.
That's great. What was your childhood like?
My childhood was very good growing up. We grew up during the Depression, but I had no awareness of it. And it was nice. It was like growing up, we lived in Borough Park, but there were farms above a few blocks of fun on Fort Hamilton Parkway. There was a miniature golf course. Father used to take me there and watch the play miniature golf.
That actually brings me to a question I had. You grew up during the Depression. Did it impact you? Did it have an effect on you?
No, I used to see furniture in the street and stuff like that, and people, young, friends I had moving away. But as far as myself, it really had no impact on me. My father always went to work and he came home. I don't guess that he made a lot of money, but he made a living, I guess, because we never wanted for anything.
Who was Poppy? What was he like as a person, as a father?
He was a very good father to me. He never reprimanded him, but if he wanted something done, he would say, and you would listen to him, because most of the time, whatever you did was fine. But if he said something that he wanted done, then he meant it.
He was a good man, right?
Good, very good man, very good. He was good. My mother was more volatile.
Tell us about your mother.
My mother was, she was a firebrand, let me put it that way. She liked to drink, she liked to smoke, play cards, she liked partying, and she was stern taskmaster. When I wouldn't listen to her, she used to beat the hell out of me. But it didn't have any effect. I always loved my mother, so I guess it didn't have too much of an effect.
Right.
On
you always seem to kind of have a nice smile or laugh when you think about your mother.
Right. I could always talk to my mother. Like when I went out with girls, my father was too stable, but my mother I could talk to anytime.
How about Aunt Edie? What was the relationship like?
Oh, we used to fight like hell. Not her. I used to beat her up all the time. I'm going to tell you a funny story about my mother. My father came home one night from, the shop where his business was, and he sat me down. He says, I got a call from this girl. He says, do you know her? I said, yeah, I know who she is. He says, she told me that she's pregnant. I says, pregnant? I said, she's full of crap. I used a condom. What is she talking about? So he was very upset. But my mother said to me, was she the first first man she ever slept with? I said, no, Ma, she must have had many guys. She said, then the hell with the bum, don't worry about it.
That's good. I guess post being a little kid, do you have a most memorable moment from your childhood? Something that really sticks out, like when you were in elementary school, or something that really had an impact?
Yeah, I remember, up till the third grade, I wasn't doing too well in school. I wasn't paying attention. And my uncles who lived next door, the two lawyers, they sat me down. They said, look, you're a smart kid. You got to start paying attention. And from that time on, I always did well in school. That was very important in the family, you know, that you do well in school. So I never had a problem after that.
Right. So you had a ton of friends in Brooklyn.
Yes.
What did you guys do? What was that like?
We used to play ball. Mostly that's what we did.
And then you just always had a good crew, right?
Right.
It always seemed
No, there was no such thing as drugs or anything like that in those days. And there was nothing. Just you played ball. So we used to go to the center was always open, you know, in the junior high school there. It was open in the afternoon and also at night. When you got older, it was open at night. So you always had a place to go play ball.
Did you do you remember your first girlfriend, or did you have a lot of girlfriends in high school?
No, I never had any because I was too young. The girls were older than me. And I never went out steady. The first girl I really cared about, you know, was Mama. The others didn't.
They didn't matter.
No, she was the only one. As soon as I saw her, that was it.
But you did have some escapades.
Like, what do you mean by escapade? Yeah, I fooled around there, but nothing. You know, I used to take them down the club room.
Right.
During the week, you were allowed to take a girl down the club. Not on the weekend. There was no. We used to have dances on Friday night. Saturday night, you had to go down. You had to have a girlfriend. You had to have a date to go to the.
So basically, if you were taking a girl to the club room, it meant you were trying to get some action.
Right, exactly. But I never. Some of the guys went steady, but I never interested me.
Yeah.
And when I went to college, I was too young. The girls didn't want to bother with me. I was 16. They were 18. They were getting married. A lot of them.
When did you find out you were getting drafted or going to be deployed?
No, when you turned 18, you had to sign. You went down and you signed. Everybody did. And then a couple of months later, you got drafted. I was in college at the time. In those days, they took you right out of school. Didn't matter if you were in school or not. Took me right out of school when I was in college,
So,
and they drafted me.
When they called your number or called you, what would that feel like?
I went down. I was used. Everybody was expecting it, and I was looking forward to it. You know, all the kids wanted to go. They thought they'd be left out, and we were lucky. They gave us an option. You could go Army, Navy, or Marines, and I picked the Navy.
Why was that?
I don't know. I figure if I get killed, I don't have to get all muddy and everything.
Did you always say that you always wanted a bed to sleep in?
Yeah, and then they sent us up. That was in November. In February, I was called up, and they took me 4 weeks to boot camp, upstate New York. Then I came home for a week, and I went back to boot camp, and they were getting ready to invade Europe. So they put me right on a ship and sent me. They sent me to Portland, Maine. I picked up a ship, and I went right overseas, and I learned how to be a fire controlman on the ship. Because I had some college, they let me learn how to be a fire controlman.
Right.
Because a lot of the kids had never even graduated high school. So, I became a fire controlman. And I was there we went down to Normandy in southern France in the Mediterranean. We sunk a sub in the Mediterranean. And we took them on board, the survivors.
Yeah.
And everybody's taking their pants off, taking their belt buckles.
As souvenirs?
Souvenirs.
So, you know, you talk about the war to my brother and I almost like you sensationalize it like it was a good
For me, it was. I was a kid. You know, when you're a kid, you don't think about getting killed. You know, I enjoyed it because I sort of. Then I went out to the Pacific. I saw the whole world, a lot of it, and I had a good time. But you don't think about getting killed. Except I got mad at the Japs when they tried. In Okinawa, they sent the kamikazes down on us. They killed themselves, the bastards. They hit our ship, but in the back, and nobody got hurt.
Do you have any specific funny stories from the war that you could tell? Maybe one story.
Let me see. Oh, yeah. No. I was in a hula house in France. No. And this girl, she says, you know, she says, I love you. I'd like to come to the States with you. Then I'll marry you after, you know, later on. They took her to bed, and she was bothering me. She came to the ship, and I used to always come back late to the ship. You had to be back by midnight. And I always was late because they used to throw me in jail. They used to catch me in the hula house and throw me in jail. So the captain, he took I was like a sergeant, you know, so they took it away from me. The next time they would give it back to me. And one time I went before the captain and he says to me, "Sweet, you here again?" I says, "Yeah, I came back late." He says, "Do you know if they opened up your head, 1,000,000 little cunts would fly out of there?"
Did the war affect any of your friends, like with post-traumatic stress?
Yes. Big Mo, he would have what you call he was in the Battle of the Bulge. And he just like quit one day. He used to carry the ammo for the BAR man, you know, and he just quit. And they put him away for a while, and then they sent him home. And then after that, he came around by himself. There was no such thing in those days. And eventually he was all right.
Right, it's got to be tough, and I imagine not just him, but some people, if you see some stuff.
All my friends, some of the guys I used to play ball with, but my personal friends all came back. But a couple of guys that I used to play ball with in the playground, they got killed during the war.
So after the war, you came back. What was it like wooing Mama? How did you know she was the one? What happened there? How'd you meet her? How did that?
I met her and she came over to our house with her mother. My mother invited them for dinner because we were relatives, you know, through great-grandparents or something. So she was in New York, living in New York with her aunt. And her mother came to New York and called my mother up, so they invited them for dinner. So my mother says, "You gotta stay home, there's a young girl coming, you know, and she'll have nobody to talk to." So I said, "I'm not staying, who wants to stay here?" I says, "I'll give you $5. So my mother gave me $5. And I said to my friends, you know, after such a time, we're eating, let's say at 2 o'clock, come around 3:30, 4 o'clock and get me out of here. So they came up to the house, and meanwhile, as soon as I saw her, that's it. I was smitten. And I took her home. Her mother said, "How's she gonna get home?" I said, "Well, I'll take her back to the Bronx." So I drove her back to the Bronx. And then after a few weeks, she cared about me too. So after my sister had gotten married and we had a spare bedroom.
Right.
So I said, I can't keep running up to the Bronx all the time. So we moved her into my house.
How long after you met her did she move in?
Oh, about a month or so. And that was it.
Wow.
I tell you, I fell in love right away. I don't know why. I don't know. It just was one of Alyssa understands. Some people are just you know, right?
You know.
So that
Other people think you're crazy,
right.
but you know.
That's great.
People go together for a few years and then they get divorced. But it's certain things you know, and Mom felt the same way.
So what's the secret? To
Wait, can I
this?
ask a question?
Of course.
So after Mama moved in, how long after was it that you got engaged? And then how long after that did you get married?
We got engaged a couple of months after she moved in, shortly after. And then we were supposed to go to get married in Nova Scotia. But her mother got sick because the people up there, everybody did their own cooking and all that stuff, you know. So my father, Sylvia's father, called my father and said, "Can you get a place in New York to get married?" Because there was no kosher places up there. So they brought, my father found the hotel where we got married, and we got married Christmas time. Otherwise, we'd have been married much before. But we had to wait till Christmas. That's the only time we could get, because they were late in finding a place.
Right.
So we got married, and we went to Miami Beach, and all my friends came down
For your honeymoon.
on our honeymoon. Oh, we all went to the Copa. They had a Copa, and Jimmy Durante was singing. He was the entertainer there. He was a big shot 10 days, Jimmy Durante. We had a wonderful honeymoon, a lot of fun.
What's the secret to a successful marriage? Well, what advice do you have for me and Alyssa, Adam, Carly? What do you need to do to really to make it work?
If the other person is upset, talk it out. You know, it's one or the other. To hold it in is no good. If something's bothering you, talk about it. And then you come to a reasonable conclusion how you're going to handle it. But if you keep it in, it's no good. Keeping it in is the worst thing you can do, because then it festers, and you don't want that. You talk about it. There's nothing, if you really care about each other, it's not going to be anything traumatic. And in your lifetime, you're going to have things go good and things go bad. You got to take the good things and the bad things. Don't get too high or too low.
That's good advice. So then you got married, obviously, and then you became a father to my Uncle Jay and my mother. What was that like? What's it like being a father?
It was great. The worst thing was that we had to go through was when Jay fell out the window, and we didn't even know if he was going to live. And we took him. It was a July 4th weekend, and he couldn't get a doctor. We wanted the best neurosurgeon there was, and he was on vacation. So we says, get him wherever he is. So he came in, and he operated on him. They stitched him all up, and thank God, you know, it took a while. We didn't know if he was going to walk at first, and he started to walk. But these are the things that people go through in life. Maybe not as traumatic, but people have good times and bad times. There's no such thing as you going through a whole lifetime and every day is going to be a good day. Things happen. Kids get sick. Parents die. Parents get sick. You know, but you got to stay on an even keel. You can't let it get you. You got to deal with everything. Whether you like it or not, you have to deal with everything.
So, you became a lawyer, and you know you went to Brooklyn Law, and
I hated being inside. I hated it. So, when in those days, the federal government, when they were hiring for AT, you had to be a lawyer in order to get the job in those days. So I took the test, and they accepted me, and I worked as a ATF, and I loved it.
Right.
It was the best thing I ever did. Never made a lot of money, but it was a great job.
So, you know,
Because what we did was, like, if there's a bombing, let's say, or like what happened in France, and there's stuff all over the place, you know, the idea, what my job was to gather all the evidence, whatever there was, the evidence there was around, and work it back to where you can get other people involved in the conspiracy. Somebody who may have sold you the guns or sold you the ammunition, or that was my job, was to go back and trace it. So I used to travel wherever it took me, you know.
and you loved your job.
Loved it
So
very
you
much.
skipped to work on Monday.
I couldn't have picked better if I tried. It was very interesting.
So that brings me to a more holistic question. What do you think makes someone happy? What do you think is what do you have to prioritize to be happy like that? It's not necessarily money. It's not necessarily what
No.
do you?
If you're satisfied with what you're doing, you know, and you're not bringing home all your problems that you're having in work, and all, everybody has those. But if the good outweighs the bad, you have to accept the bad things, and you take the good things, and you talk about it. And if that's funny, laughter is very important. If you can laugh about silly things that you thought were a problem, and you know, you can make a joke out of things, but never joke with a person if they're not in the mood. You know, if they're in a funk or something. You got to do it when they're in a funk. When they get over it, they
Right. You're one of the funniest guys I know. Do you think that's helped you stay healthier? And
I don't know. I would like to think it did, but you never know. I think it puts you more on an even keel if you can laugh at yourself.
Right.
You can't take yourself so seriously that if you do something that people think are funny, you know, and if you want to kibitz other people, you got to be willing
Right.
to take it too. You can't only give it and not take it, or else it's no good.
So I think your humor kind of transcends generations. You make me and my brother laugh. You'll make anyone laugh. Has it ever gotten you into trouble?
Oh, sure. It used to get me in trouble. They wanted to make me a supervisor, you know. And I said I was happy in the street. So they wanted to bring me, and my boss said to me, look, you can't keep laughing and kidding around, you know, we're not going to give you the job. I said, I'll try my best. That's all I can promise you. So they made me a supervisor, and I did that for about 6 months, and I hated it. I couldn't get out of the office. So I went in and I told them, this is not for me. I went back out.
Good for you. But where do you think you got it from? Was this from your mother? Or
My mother.
And all your friends, were you always the guy that...
Yeah, my mother was very, very funny. You know how she got to this country?
How?
My mother lived in a small town in Russia, right? And her parents were comfortable. They had a store and they made a comfortable living. But she hated it. She's a small town. She wanted to get out of there and come to the United States. She had a guy here that was here who wanted to marry her. That's the only way her parents would let her go. So she told him she's going to marry this guy. And she told him she's coming here to marry him. So when she came over here, he picked her up when she got off Ellis Island, and he was gonna, you know, she said let's go. She says, I don't want to see you anymore. I don't like you. And she went to live with she had an uncle that lived in the Bronx somewhere. So she went to live with him, and she got a job in the factory. And that's where she met my father, in the factory. They both worked in the same factory. But she got out of there, and then my Uncle Max, the only way he left because he ran away from World War One. They wanted to put him in. He didn't want to fight because you couldn't work for anybody. I mean, make a decent living over there.
Right.
So that's the only everybody got wiped out in the Holocaust. My mother's whole family.
What, going on that, what does being Jewish mean to you? Is
What?
it being Jewish? Is it traditional? What's the importance of being Jewish and keeping that going? And
I tell you, it's important because if you have a place. I remember, I tried, and before I went with ATF, I tried to get in the FBI, and I got an interview, and everything was fine. They didn't hire Jews in those days when Hoover was there. They didn't hire blacks. You had a token Jew and a token black guy, and that was it. And I always resent that, but I would tell anybody right out, I'm Jewish. You're part of it. I mean, I'm only traditional, I always was. I was never, religious was not important. The tradition was important because you feel part of something if you keep the tradition. I think. I feel that way. Not everybody feels that way. Like Michael don't feel that way. But that's fine for him. I feel that way. And we try to bring our children up that way. And your mother and Jay, they kept it going. But, what you do, you have to do what's good for you and your spouse. If you don't feel that way, then you do it differently. Whatever, but you have to agree on something.
I've always felt that in this family, and what I've heard is that it dates back to Poppy, is that we've been a pretty progressive family.
Yes.
Do you've never cared who a person loved or what a person's skin color was, and I think that's something that we've brought down through the generations.
That was never bothered me at all. It's what the person was like.
Right.
I mean, I worked with a fellow by the name of Jim Collington. He's the nicest guy. We used to have a lot of fun together when on the job. He was a great guy. The only way he got an education is he played football in a small college in Pennsylvania. And he got his degree, and he went to law school, and he got on the job.
Black guy?
Yeah. But I don't care. I never did. It never bothered me. We used to play ball up in Harlem. When we used to play in our league when we had with seniors, we'd go up there and play. They would come down to us and play. Never mattered.
Okay, so now a little more high-level questions. If you could do anything different in your whole life, if anything, what would it be? Or would you do anything different?
I don't know. When I think about it, I'd do it. Maybe I would have tried to spend more time with the children when they were younger. I had to be away an awful lot. And, as I got older, I realized how much Sylvia had all the responsibility. And that wasn't good. But when I was home, I spent as much time as I could with them. But I think I would have liked to spend more time with the kids if I could have.
What piece of technology or what innovation do you think has changed the world the most and had the most impact?
The most impact
that you've seen
in this country, I think, was the automobile. In the world, it was probably the airplane, but the automobile, what it did was Detroit, it made all the blacks started coming up to get jobs from the South. Before they were all farmers and stuff, At least then they got up and they all could make a living and raise a family. There were jobs for them. the one thing I always had against Ford would not hire any Jewish people if he could help it. He didn't like Jews. He was an anti-Semite. Till he became, such a big deal, and then they started hiring him when the unions came in.
Mom, what are you most proud of, or what do you want your legacy to be?
I want people to just to say that he was a fun guy, and we all loved him. That's all I want, is everybody should be happy that they had a grandfather like me and a grandmother like your mama.
I agree.
That's all I want you to remember.
So, what do you think of the world today, the landscape, socially? Do you think we've went downhill since your generation? Do you think we're...
You know what the problem is? That I feel that they're not willing to compromise. Congress won't. You can't accomplish anything if somebody doesn't give a little on both sides and get something done. This way, if either side don't compromise, nothing is ever going to get done. And you kids are going to feel the effect of it eventually. If nothing gets done, how can you grow and your children grow?
So now,
people have to learn how to get along.
My brother's having a child. You're getting older. How would you explain your twilight years? Seeing that the family's growing.
I would like live long enough to see you get married, have a family, and he and the child. If not, though, you'll have to tell them stories about me. That's all.
There's so many to tell, for real. So to end, can you give us, for the future great grandchildren, I guess, what kind of advice would you give them, or send a note so we can always show this to them?
I don't know. Just show respect for all people. White, black, gray, dark, gay, straight, everybody. Have respect. If they're good people, you have respect for them.